inside Australia's quarantine camps. Now, Australia's quarantine camps are being built to house those considered at risk to the rest of the population. Eventually, this will likely mean those unwilling to cooperate. Cooperate by taking the jab. Is Australia a prototype or a test case for what lies ahead for the rest of the world? Will the rest of the world follow suit and imprison those they consider a risk? And we even have a video of the building of one of these camps, which they lovingly call a well camp. Talk about Orwellian double talk. That's what we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. Australian national identity kind of centers around a collectivist mindset, one to protect the many by treating the few as a potential threat, often at the expense of personal liberty. If you do not cooperate with the government, you are considered among the few. Australia already has a health passport system ready to go, and some Australians are choosing to download the app. If you want to look at it, you can download it yourself through Australia's MyGov or the Express Plus Medicare app. In this previous video, we discussed the dangers of a health passport and how the World Health Organization and Bill Gates just released plans and designs for a worldwide health pass. Link is down in the description, but back to the misnamed well camps. Australia is the one nation openly bragging about building a quarantine infrastructure as a long-term answer to the pandemic. They are building numerous camps, each with a capacity of around 2,000 people outside of Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, etc., to house those who are considered unsafe. The sites are called, quote, Centers for National Resilience, end of quote, and are described to the people as an embodiment of the country's commitment to be COVID-0. Quote, this is going to be a great boost for our defense against the Delta virus in this country. In fact, I believe we need regional facilities right across the country. That's the Queensland Prime Minister, Palazurek. Efforts aren't only taking place in Australia to limit personal liberty, of course. In the USA, just weeks after Pfizer's jab was approved by the FDA, the American president delivered his hardest-hitting COVID speech on September 9th, planning to enlist OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to require a jab or weekly testing for all employees of companies with over 100 workers. I mean, this is a lot of people. It's about 100 million. Today, I went down to the local pharmacy to see what the result of the speech might have been. And there were long lines for the jab, so I guess the hardline approach by the president is working, at least from his perspective. But the USA has said nothing about quarantine camps as of yet. Now, here is the video from Australia to give you a flavor of these internment type camps and the spin being put on them by the local officials.
Howard Springs near Darwin is held up as the gold standard of quarantine. Separate cabins, on-site testing, catering, and so far no known breaches. But the Queensland government reckons it can do better.
This is going to be a great boost for our defence against the Delta virus.
State Cabinet has signed off on the well camp facility, first proposed 7 months ago. Businessman John Wagner will build it next door to his airport.
We will have the first 500 beds operational before Christmas.
The state government will lease it and run it. The cost to taxpayers is being kept under wraps.
What fantastic value it will be if we can avoid just one lockdown.
The federal government's previously rejected the plan on grounds it's too far from a tertiary hospital, but the Deputy Premier's declared it
the perfect location.
Still, some old sticking points remain, like will international flights to Wellcamp be approved?
Well, we hope so. So we'll be continuing those discussions with the federal government. But we can bus people from Brisbane up here if we have.
The Premier says any COVID patients will be transported to Brisbane. And so Queensland will have 2 purpose-built quarantine facilities. The Commonwealth is backing one here on Defence land at Pinkenbar near Brisbane Airport. There'll be rooms for 1,500 people by the middle of next year.
Currently, the camps are being promoted as designed only for those quarantined after exposure from COVID. An old mining camp called Howard Springs is an active camp being used to house international travelers and domestic travelers. And all of them are forced to wait in the camp until they can prove they're COVID-free. However, the decisions made by governments about who poses a risk, are not free from politics. Back in the 1900s, Australia is infamous for linking its earliest quarantine efforts to its racist white Australia policy, locking up those from other races who they thought were, get this, unsanitary. Many believe the new Centers for National Reliance will also have a political motivation. Last year, when the pandemic first hit, Australia used its Christmas Island to house those in quarantine. Christmas Island is in the middle of the Indian Ocean and has a notorious prison island reputation like Alcatraz in the States. It may likely be used this way again as well. It seems only a matter of time to this ministry before these camps house the unvaccinated, those who they consider a risk to others. I mean, just to get a sense for the feeling some people have about the unvaccinated, here were Biden's words to the unvaccinated this week. Quote, "We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost us all." Pitting the vaccinated against the unvaccinated will result in a separation of the 2 camps, likely with the unvaxxed ending up in a real camp, a well camp. But it's really a division of the cooperative and the uncooperative if you think about it. We imagine the campers will be offered a jab every day in the camp. Only the most resilient will refuse. After a few weeks, everyone's going to become tired of prison camp life. And soon, 99% of the population will have taken it and become safe in the eyes of the government. And we highly expect this trial run in Australia to be successful by their measure of success, and it will be promoted as such to other nations by the media to prepare all the nations for the next step. What is the next step? Well, it will be the next wave of COVID, of course, tied to yet another deadly variant requiring yet another booster. Those without the booster now will have to be the ones quarantined in the camps. Do you see how this might fit into an overall plan to force compliance? All in the name of safety and elimination of risk, unfortunately. The risk they speak of is a fellow human being. And of course, other unsafe individuals might end up in the camps as well, possibly those who exercise their Second Amendment rights. Possibly those who don't like the policies of the government or the direction it is going. They will be labeled domestic terrorists. You can see how this might expand in scope. If you don't think there is a movement afoot to label all who disagree with the government as domestic terrorists, just take a look at this cartoon from 9/11. Look at it closely. Look at how the cartoonist seems to imply that the January 6th event dwarfs the 9/11 terror attacks. This is propaganda in its most full form. And for everyone who died on 9/11, it's pretty disrespectful. Now, how does this fit in with the end times, which are fast upon us? Before we look at the globalists and their agenda as being behind this whole thing, that the globalists are the ones aiming to imprison you, we need to place the blame firmly where it belongs. Click right here to keep watching how it is the principalities and powers in heavenly places, and how the Bible tells us that we can overcome them. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.